Information soaked inside the mind. Wisdom, experience, we're focused on your grind. Understanding comprehension through the quotes and all lines. And respect that should be given to your folks at all times. Expect to be amazed with what I'm posting online. From the funky instrumentals to my logos and designs. Message on the garment, plus it comes with hard rhymes. Knowledge, wisdom, understanding, and respect at all times.
Dropping heat rocks on y'all bitch ass. You know what I'm saying?
The Freedmen's Bank was a tool to confiscate the remaining wealth of Aboriginal Indians who were not part of the Native American reservation system. Let's look at how the Northern Unionist, evangelical, Protestant, abolitionist, capitalist banking clique performed this confiscation. First of all, let's make sure most people understand that the Aboriginal Indians were experts at farming and agriculture, especially in the Southeast. They'd been there for generations, thousands of years. And contrary to popular opinion, slaves were valued as assets. So therefore, they're often paid in cash. They're also allowed to sell plantation product for their own profit. And they even inherited parts of the plantations when masters died. So there's plenty of wealth accumulated over many generations. Okay, so here we are. It's 1865. They've decimated the South. There's a bunch of Union Army soldiers on all the plantations. They've created this Freedmen's Bureau that you see here. Okay, and look what this bureau, these agents are allowed to do. Okay, they're able to control access to food, education, legal aid. All right. The South was literally starving. They destroyed the plantations at the end of the war. Had to, be agreeable to these Union military officers as well as the agents of the new regime, the Freedmen's Bureau. The first way they funnel them into the Freedmen's Bank is they pretty much exclude them from the new national banking system that this Congress, this abolitionist Congress created in 1864. And that national banking system actually had some deposit insurance plus serious oversight by the federal government through the United States Treasury. As a matter of fact, I've looked at the legislation. It actually had a very high capital reserve requirement of basically like 30%. They had to purchase Treasury bonds from the United States Treasury, all right, and then keep 30% of those bonds with the government, with the United States Treasury. Meanwhile, they create the Freedmen's Bank that has none of these protections, none of them. So the next thing is that the banks, the Freedmen banks, are located in strategic places where the big plantations were and where there were clusters of these Aboriginal communities that had been, quote unquote, set free. Really what had happened is their land and their jobs have been destroyed by, the burning through of the South. So what kind of assets did these Aboriginal Indians possess? Well, they still actually had land, or they had work land, and under their tribal systems or under the old Confederate state systems, they would have had titles and deeds. Here, your only option is to give us the titles to your land, and we'll put them in our safety deposit boxes, right? And we're going to use your land as collateral to make loans and investments. But of course, they weren't making loans and investments to the Southern freedmen, to this class of people that was depositing with them. They were taking this money, all right, and investing it in railroad stocks and steamboat shipping company stocks and new electric stocks. All this stuff is being done by the shareholders and trustees of the Freedmen's Bank. There was no oversight by Congress. There was no oversight by the Treasury. There was no insurance. Okay, then after 5 years, actually changed their own corporate charter to allow them to invest in anything. So it goes on and on what they were doing here. So how would these Union Army officers and these Freedmen's Bureau agents, sell this to them? They would tell the Indians that this was created specifically for this. This was an Indian-friendly bank, right? Okay, and besides the Bureau and besides the military, you also have this new group of like evangelical Protestant groups coming down, in particular the Methodists, the Baptists, and the Presbyterians, and they're like the unofficial social and cultural arm of the Union. Okay, they're coming down there, they're taking over old Indian infrastructure, their schools, they're taking over their mills, they're taking over their farms. Okay, the schools they were turning into schools to train the new white European people in the system as well, because they were actually being imported from all over Eastern Europe for the most part, in the Caucasus regions. So they actually had to be trained in this new system of land ownership and surveyed land and frankly how to farm. Meanwhile, they had other schools turned into re-education and indoctrination schools for the Indians. That's what was going on. And these are the three religious organizations that were deeply on the record tied to it. So once they've accumulated and attracted all these land titles, these deeds, okay, therefore, when the bank collapses due to investing in initial public offerings and crazy stock market things, they're able to just turn around and go, oh, sorry, your deposits are gone. Now, the next question might be, well, okay, that stinks that I lost my dollars, but I had a title in there to my 200 acres of land in this part of Georgia. What happened to that title? Oh, funny thing happened after the bank went bankrupt. These records got destroyed. This is literally what they did. This is a hum the record. This is how the rulers of the United States that won the Civil War, these wonderful abolitionists, these moral Puritans, these Methodists, Baptists, and Presbyterians, this is what they did. There's nobody else in charge but them. Just read this one. It speaks for itself. Here's a specific example of the 1874 DC branch fire. Of course, that was the largest of all the institutions in the freedmen's banking system. This shows what happened in the southern branch. They literally closed their doors overnight and immediately began burning the records. I mean, they have these accounts in the newspapers of Union officers and contractors clearing out the offices, destroying files, and boarding up buildings. Then even the National Archive, whoops, we lost them. So what can you say? There's nothing good to say about this. Here's another slick way. In 1870, they altered their charter so that the banks, the individual bank branches, no longer need to hold original deposit certificates or land title receipts. So you're native, or you're an Aboriginal Indian. You own a couple hundred acres. You brought to them the paperwork, which would be a title, okay, a land title receipt, and that's the only one you have. We don't have copy machines back then. You have to understand what banks meant. And historically, way before the United States of America, that's why banks in ancient times were actually subsumed under temples. Okay? Yeah, that's right. Temples and churches were stores of wealth. So now that all the records about the property titles are destroyed, they now have an excuse to resurvey the land. The county government takes control of it, and then they conduct property sales to two types of people: very wealthy northern banks who are buying up large tracts. Example of Sanford, Florida, a unionist general, rich guy named Sanford, buys 12,000 acres and starts to colonize it with poor people from Sweden to start a celery farm. Yes, that is true. No, it did not succeed. Okay, so now you see the setup, right? They've confiscated their money wealth through the bankruptcy. But the way to confiscate the land wealth is they have to lose the titles, right? So then they burn all the information after the bankruptcy. Now you have the excuse to resurvey, reorganize the land into parcels, smaller parcels, and now start to sell it off. Selling it off to the big banks to start new plantations and colonies, and selling it off to this new group of imported, pauperish, Caucasian, Eastern European white people that they're flooding the country with at the tune of about 500,000 people a year from 1880 to 1920. Thank you for listening. I hope you found this enjoyable and interesting. Stay tuned for my next part on the Freedmen's Bank when I go into specifics of people and towns in which the wealth transfer occurred. Handsome History, out.
What if I told you your history wasn't just stolen, but it was rewritten with spells? Now wait, just follow me now. Let's talk about word spells. And I'm gonna need you to really understand what I'm putting down. Negus, Negro, and of course, the N-word. You see what they did there? This shows spells of erasure and power. This is how they erased whole nations with just language alone. They didn't need whips and chains forever, just words. Let's break down how languages itself was used to erase our people. Let's talk about it. Negus, which by definition meant king, used as a title of the sovereign of Ethiopia, a ruler, or the supreme ruler of Ethiopia. It represented melanated rulership divine order, and indigenous sovereignty. It was a noble title that was used for Ethiopian emperors that goes back thousands of years, tied directly to the Solomon dynasty, which traces back to lineage to King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. The colonizers knew this. Portuguese and Spaniards and missionaries encountered this word while fighting and trading in East Africa. I do want to let you know that this word had no negative meaning to its original Ethiopian context. This term meant sovereignty, respect, and divine right. The Europeans later collapsed negus into this word when they was writing about the melanated people they encountered globally, Africa, Asia, to the Americas. And then this word became a racial tag. This stripped the dignity of sovereignty and turned a royal marker into a category of property or enslaved. Over time, they further twisted this word into this word, weaponizing it to a term of domination. So the same sound that once meant king became a chain word or a spell of oppression. You understand? By corrupting the word, they could reposition the melanated indigenous tribes as just Negro slaves instead of sovereignty peoples. Remember, language was not neutral. It was a tool of conquest. Pay attention, this is deeper than just history. You know how they say it's power in the tongue? Words wasn't just communication. It was used for weapons. By twisting this word to this word to this word, it was a deliberate act of word magic. So the same word that meant king or sovereign, reducing it into categories such as colored or slave, then corrupting that into a slur that carries psychic balance for the past 400 years. So you know how most of us be like, yeah, like the 400-year spell's up, or we've been, under a spell for the last 400 years? Because that's exactly what it was. Repetition creates reality. So if you keep calling a group of people slaves, colored, the N-word over and over again, you manifest that sovereignty erasure because you embedded that into their minds until that group of people start to believe they're nothing more than just that. You get it? That's the same principle as affirmations and prayers. And we're talking about 400 plus years of this. It was a binding. Proverbs 18:21. The tongue has the power of life and death. They knew exactly what they was doing. Taking the meaning, weaponizing it, and using repetition to strip us of our memory and royalty. That's why they rewrote the dictionaries, the laws, and census records, and made it so that every legal and social document kept repeating that word spell. Let's wake it up. When they came over here and got off that boat and seen this, they saw our melanated indigenous ancestors and started calling us the N-word or Negroes. They really was calling us kings and queens because they knew exactly who we were.
In Japan, I had no idea that they had made the sarcophagus covers that were exactly the same shape as the one, and oddly shaped, exactly the same as the ones they made in Egypt.
And in a place, there is supposed to be zero connection between ancient Japan and ancient Egypt. That's not supposed to exist. And if you compare that sarcophagus work, it's like, it looks uncannily similar.
Impossible, almost impossible that two people would come up with the same design.
China, 1945. The Empire of Japan retreats. U.S. Airman James Gorsman has made his mark. He's returning from Chongqing, China. Supplies delivered to rallying American troops. But engine trouble has him flying low. Real low. Low enough to see it. Rising out of a grass-matted Chinese plane, it arrests his vision. Stuns and captivates him. All at once. Directly below us was a gigantic white pyramid. It looked as if it were from a fairy tale. The pyramid was draped in shimmering white. It could have been metal or some other form of stone. It was white on all sides. The remarkable thing was the capstone, a huge piece of jewel-like material that could have been crystal. There was no way we could have landed, although we wanted to. We were struck by the immensity of the thing. And this was not the first time these pyramids had been spotted. They might have been unknown to Americans, much like they are today. But the Chinese knew. A race of men famous for their discretion and quiet power. The Chinese had kept the knowledge of their pyramids under wraps for centuries. No, millennia. They knew of these ancient monoliths even as far back as 1667, when Jesuit priest Athanasius Kircher would be the first white man to write of them. But that was then. This is now. What does the world know of China's pyramids today? Could they have anything to do with Africa's very own, thousands of miles to the west, those of Kush and Kemet? Is there a link to a time when the Nesuts of Egypt, black kings like Jossa, Khufu, Mentuhotep expanded the reach and influence of the black land? We know from Herodotus' accounts that the great pharaoh Senusret III conquered as far as Ionia, seeding the Greek civilization. Yes, the Greek civilization. But did the conquering pharaoh and his generals go further? Or is it just a coincidence that the oldest surviving Egyptian pyramid is about 4,700 years old, a mere 400 years older than the ancient ruins surrounding China's oldest pyramid, the Pyramid of Zhangji? We are not the first to ask these questions, and much as some would wish against it, we will not be the last. Before racial prejudice would overwhelm and debilitate the vision of the West, white men penned the same questions. But alas, when amongst Athanasius Kircher's barbarian brethren it became verboten to wonder at the most glaring of questions, black men would take up the pen others had abandoned to seek the truth themselves. The following then is from the quills, the pens and typewriters of these giants, white men and black men, those who dared to seek the truth regardless. Not our words, but theirs. Open your eyes to the archaeological and the anthropological record. Listen to the words of those who followed in the wake of Marco Polo, deep into the wilderness of jade. Ladies and gentlemen, behold the Black Orient. Athanasius Kircher, German Jesuit priest and traveler, writing in China Monumentis Illustrata, 1667. The Egyptians always regarded the pyramids with divine honor. The traces of this same cult can be found in China today. The Chinese hold their pyramids in such veneration that no one would dare approach them unless he had first performed the appropriate ceremonies. It is clear that the Chinese borrow these pyramids from the Egyptians, Persians, and others. Godfrey Higgins, Fellow of the Royal Asiatic Society, alumnus of Emmanuel College, Cambridge, writing in Anacalypsis, 1836. A black race in very early times had more influence over the affairs of the world than has been lately suspected, and the effects of this influence have not entirely passed away. It was the opinion of Sir William Jones that this great nation of blacks formerly possessed the dominion of Asia. These must have been the people called by Mr. Maurice Kushites. In the most ancient temples scattered throughout Asia, where his worship is yet continued, a god is found black as jet, with the flat face, thick lips, and curly hair of the Negro. Several statues of him may be met with in the Museum of the East India Company. There are 2 exemplars of him brooding on the face of the deep, upon a coiled serpent. To what time are we to allot to this Negro? He will be proved to have been prior to the god called Krishna. He must have been prior to or contemporaneous with the Black Empire, supposed by Sir William Jones to have flourished at Sidon. The religion of this Negro god is found, by the ruins of his temples and other circumstances, to have been spread over an immense extent of country, even to the remotest parts of Britain, and to have been professed by devotees inconceivably numerous. Mr. Wilsford, in his treatise on Egypt and the Nile in the Asiatic Researches, informs us that many very ancient statues of the god Buddha in India have crisp, curly hair with flat noses and thick lips, and adds, "Nor can it be reasonably doubted that a race of Negroes formerly had power and preeminence in India." This is confirmed by Mr. Maurice, who says, "The figures in the Hindu caverns are of a very different character from the present race of Hindus. Their countenances are broad and full, the nose flat, and the lips, particularly the underlip, remarkably thick." Ethnologist James Cowles Pritchard in The Natural History of Man, 1843. In the interior of many of the islands and in the mountainous parts of the peninsula of Malaya, it is well known that there are tribes of woolly-haired people. They are termed by the Spaniards in the Philippines Negrito del Monte. They have short, crisp or woolly hair and bear altogether a considerable resemblance to the Negroes of Africa. French traveler and anthropologist Henri Imbert in Los Negritos de la Chine, 1923. The Negroid races peopled at some time all the south of India, Indochina, and China. The south of Indochina actually has now pure Negritos as the Semangs and mixed as the Malays and the Sakais. In the first epochs of Chinese history, the Negrito type people all the south of this country, and even in the island of Hainan, as we have attempted to prove in our study on the Negritos, or black men of this island. Skulls of these Negroes have been found in the island of Formosa, and traces of this Negroid element in the islands of Ryukyu to the south of Japan. In the earliest Chinese history, several texts in classic books spoke of these diminutive blacks. When these Negritic elements appeared in South and East Asia, it was represented by the Negrito and Papuan tribes who, pressed by the Aryans, had to flee to East and Southeast China, through India, and then to the neighboring islands and archipelagos of the Asian continent. This same race is mentioned in the fabulous geography of Shanghai King, written some centuries before our era. When the Chinese advanced into the region, which today forms the southeast of the province of Anhui, they again encountered some of these dwarf tribes there. One of the last points in eastern China where this small race still lived at the time of the Han was in the mountainous region of the Shantung Peninsula, where there is precisely a small mountain range called Kunlun. These pygmies were then probably driven from their country and forced to flee to Japan, for according to the annals of the Han, a kingdom of dwarves existed in the east of China, and the Japanese are still designated by the Chinese under the name of Wojian, the dwarves. Japanese legends themselves tell of the struggles fought against terrible dwarves by the first conquerors of Japan. A Japanese proverb says that a person must have half black blood to be brave. Reverend James Marmaduke Body, The Ethnology of the Japanese Race, presented in the Colored American magazine 1905, as quoted by Kaya Sibeko in The African Presence in the Ancient Far East, 2009. They are also described as having peculiar features, crisp hair and dark complexion. Besides their Negro features, which are very observable, the early Japanese historians themselves have described for us the black barbarians of the South, who in an age which antedates authentic history, came from the South in ships and settled in Japan. These immigrants mingled and amalgamated one with another and with the natives, and in time became a homogeneous race, whose predominating physical characteristics bespeak the unmistakable presence of a large Negro element. Armand de Quatrefages, The Pygmies, 1885. The Negro type was originally characterized in southern Asia, of which no doubt it was the sole occupant for an infinite period of time. From there, the various representations of the type migrated into various directions. Invasions or infiltrations of various yellow and white races have separated the Negro populations, which formerly occupied a continuous area. The Negrito subtype is one of the oldest of the race, and was least predominant in India and Indochina when the racial crossing began. The late great Runoko Rashidi, The African Presence in Early Asia, 1988. Early Chinese legends relate traditions of divine dynasties, one being the epoch of the 5 emperors. The first emperor, known as Fu Shi or Fu He, 2935 to 2838 BC, is described as being a woolly-haired Negro. He is credited with establishing government, originating social institutions, and cultural inventions. Similar to the Egyptian god Thoth, he taught his people to fish with nets and rear domestic animals and devised cultural inventions. Fu Shi was the first to develop writing, organize sacrifices, and taught the worship of spirits. South of the Yangtze River, the earliest Neolithic sites, 6000 to 4360 BC, are to be found in the provinces of Sichuan, Guangxi, Yunnan, and the western parts of the Guangdong as far as the Pearl River. Other sites, central Shenzi, southwestern Shanxi, and western Honan, all show evidence of Negroid skeletal remains that are associated with stone implements. As late as the Qin dynasty, 221 to 206 BC, a continuous occupation of this region by black types existed. Quote, Negritos, whom the Chinese call black dwarves, are reported in the mountainous districts of Yangtze after the 3rd century of our era. However, they are not mentioned. Some emigrated, but others remained and were assimilated by the dominant southern Mongolian stock, as witnessed to kinky hair and swarthy skin noticeable among a few southern Chinese. The Qiang people, who may have originally come from the west, were black. The present-day people known as the Na-Ki or Na-Si considered themselves descendants of the Qiang. The name Na-Ki was apparently given to the Qiang by the Mosso people due to their darker complexion. Na-Ki means black man, Na means black, Ki means man. In a tomb from Xiao Tun was found a decorative motif of intertwined animal forms of Egyptian or Mesopotamian origins. This was evidently a degenerated version of the famous hero and beast motif, which also originated in Mesopotamia and Egypt. Today, China guards the secrets of its pyramids like the treasures they are. Unlike the pillaged tombs of ancient Africa, none are allowed to intrude. But you have heard the observations of some of those who got the closest. They traveled and witnessed the places and the people they wrote of. And if you noticed, they did not merely refer to their own thoughts and opinions. They also cited the testimony of the ancient Chinese. So then, what did those early chroniclers think? Do they tell us what became of the blacks of a bygone Asia, the progenitors and predecessors of the Chinese? Can they tell us why there are today so few of these ancient black men in China and its surrounding islands?
Do you know that in the heart of China lies another collection of pyramids, just as captivating, but with an entirely different origin story? These are the Anlong Pyramids, nestled in the karst landscape of Guizhou province. Unlike their man-made Egyptian counterparts, these pyramids are a product of nature's artistry, sculpted over millions of years. Around 200 million years ago, this region was submerged beneath a shallow sea. Minerals dissolved in the water, eventually recrystallizing as dolomite, the building blocks of these majestic formations. Over eons, periodic climate changes, geological shifts, and the relentless force of erosion shaped these mountains into the pyramid-like structures we see today. The distinct layered appearance of the rocks is a result of this slow and steady process, with each layer representing a different period in geological time. Since gaining attention online in 2018, the Anlong Pyramids have become a magnet for tourists from around the world, eager to witness the awe-inspiring power of nature.
You're gonna love this. So China keeps their pyramids secretive, pretty under wraps, for a really good reason. They don't really know what they are. The 40 that we know of are claimed to be burial mounds when no bodies have ever been found in them, just around them. What I'm about to show you is just 15 of them. They're deliberately buried with shallow-rooted trees planted on top of them. They publicly say they don't have the resources or technology to properly excavate these without damaging them. Now, a lot of these are concentrated in two specific areas, but one area in particular has a bunch of them just in a straight line. The tricky thing with these is they don't really look like pyramids from above. You have to use the 3D feature on Google Earth to really see where these are at in the landscape. But as soon as you do that, then you see the line of pyramids across miles and miles and miles of the Chinese landscape. It's just pyramid after pyramid after pyramid in random fields. These are not small either. A few of them have more volume than the Great Pyramid of Giza. The main problem still is a lot of people don't know what these are called or even where to start looking to find them. But being able to view them from above using a map with the locations mapped out has a couple useful features. Take the Zion pyramids, for example. They share the same alignment as Teotihuacan in Mexico and Giza that correlates with the constellation of Orion. From the ground, you can't see that Anchor aligns with Draco or the Yucatan aligns with everything. Now, what I'm using is my personal map of the remnants of the ancient world. There are over 300 of these places scattered across the globe. This took me years to compile, but it's really cool. So if you go down the Nile, for example, there's a ton of ruins, but you don't know where they are or what they're called, so I marked them, and now you know there's a pyramid on top of that mountain. So let's go to America. There are 118 pyramids in Egypt, but there are over 2,000 in America. This part of the map is just the known pyramids. The coolest part is when you zoom out and you get to see the whole thing, the entire scale of what they built. Like, you don't know there's a pyramid on top of this mountain here unless you live there or you're very familiar with the area, but there it is. If you own Hidden History already, it's already updated on the map automatically. If you want it, you can acquire it for a whopping $17, which will buy me a haircut and my girlfriend flowers, who had to put up with me inputting coordinates into Google Earth for 12 hours last night.
Million black people in America are the role models for 1.8 billion black people in the world. When we say something's cool, it's cool in Tibet. When we say something's a dud, it's a dud in North Korea. We have mastered culture, community, and cool and creativity, yes or no? So now all we have to do is switch, become bilingual, and master capitalism, commerce, and a new community. Don't go from rocking the mic to owning it. So I want you just to shift your brain. In other words, you are the capital. You already have what you need. When you walk in a room, you are unique. Everybody wants to be you, except they don't want to be black.
The black man in America is the most copied man on this planet, bar none. Everybody want to be a nigga, but nobody want to be a nigga. How about that question?